Thank you. We'll actually start class next week with these 3 questions. So if you actually just want to look this stuff up on the internet or actually talk to teachers, is just don't ask random people on the street, but but ask different people that you think are, education minded, what they think literacy is and what is its purpose and how do we teach it. And I bet you'll get a bunch of different answers. But by the end of this class, I want you to be able to speak for, at length about what is literacy, why do we teach it, and how do we teach it, and especially how. That's probably where you need the most information is how do I do this? I've got 20 kids staring at me. How do I teach them to read and write, etc.? So my thinking on this is, what is literacy? Literacy includes more than just reading and writing. So most of you probably wrote reading and writing, but it actually also includes, and our state standards allude to this, it includes listening and speaking, and it also includes what we call representing, which is using media to share things. So language arts and literacy includes media representations, right? Like depicting things with PowerPoints and brochures and prezzies and whatnot, all those media representations. So literacy includes visual aspects too. How do I put together a newsletter so it's appealing to the eye, right? So it's not just print literacy. We're also, with technology, looking at what we call visual literacies, right? Then there's this aspect of digital literacies. How do I read an ebook? And how is it different than reading print text? Those are questions I'd say all of us are kind of thinking about, right? So you've probably thought about that. How do I read with an iPad, etc.? So digital, it includes digital literacies. It includes media literacy. How do I think about things that are out there in the media? How do I get kids to think critically about what they read on the internet? Not everything is true. Wikipedia isn't the ultimate answer. We have to think about what we read and evaluate who wrote it, and maybe it's propaganda, right? There's critical literacy. So again, thinking about our textbook, is it biased? Did it include all voices and viewpoints? That's what we call critical literacy. So sort of interrogating the text. Like, remember I encouraged y'all, if you see an idea in the text you don't agree with, write it down. Read against the text. That's okay too, and that should be encouraged. Reading is developmental, right? So it starts from birth, as our authors of your reading this week suggests, or some would say before birth. Some people read and sing to the baby in utero, right? But basically it starts from beginning and it develops over time, and each child's different. We have reading stages, but some children are faster or develop faster, and some develop at different rates. So that developmental continuum varies for each child. And then why do we read? Let me tell you some of mine, and maybe you had some of these written down. The goal is to have independent readers and writers, right? We don't want children coming to us. I don't know what this word means, right? We couldn't function in society if everybody needed help with everything. So the goal in learning and in life is independence, right? You think big picture, like society. We want people to participate in democracy. That was one reason we started public schools, is so people could be citizens, right? So think big picture. Reading is a civil right, right? You can't vote and read your ballot unless you can read and think about who you're voting for. So being able to participate in a democracy. Jobs, maybe some of you wrote that. Can't read and write to a certain level, it's really hard to fill out a job application. It's hard to communicate well on that job, hard to learn how to train to be that job, right? So big reasons, big societal reasons. Kind of back to the classroom though, we want kids to be strategic, right? Literacy is about learning how to be strategic, right? What do I do when I don't understand? What do I do when I don't know a word? So that's all part of the goal of literacy too, is being problem solving. And I want y'all to really embrace that, this idea of reading as problem solving. Not just at the decoding level or the word level, but at the big picture, text level. Reading is problem solving. And then y'all probably want kids to love reading, right? So love reading, lifelong learners is what we call it. Lifelong learners. How do we teach reading? That's the heart of this class, and I can't give you like a very short answer, but I wrote a few ideas down and I'll share them with you now. Kind of some big ideas, and then we'll wrap up tonight's class. So one of the most basic things we do is teach kids the code the code of reading, which is the alphabet and the letters and sounds and the relationship they make. So code breaking, right, is kind of one way to teach it. It's not the only way. As we talked about, comprehension is the goal. We want meaningful tasks, so we don't want to give kids busy work. We want everything we do to be meaningful to that child, right? Meaningful tasks in class. Vocabulary. So vocabulary should really be infused in all of your literacy instruction, even phonics. So like, what does the word mean? Can we use it in a sentence? What does this word mean to you? Have you ever done whatever the word is? And talking about vocabulary all along the way. Motivation. You've got to motivate kids. There's two ideas in education, skill and will. You can't just teach skill if the kids aren't motivated. So you got to have skill and will. You want them to want to learn. A couple other things that I'll leave you with, and then we can continue this discussion next week. You've got to have access to books. Have you been in classrooms where there's like no books? And you're like, well, what do they do in this classroom? You know, worksheets all day? You've got to have books in your classroom. The kids need access to books, even if it's the school library. Some of them don't have books at home, and you're it. So you've got to have whatever you can get your hands on. So I encourage you to start collecting books now. Garage sales, half-price books, whatever you can do to get books for your future students. They will greatly appreciate it. So access to text. And that's kind of it for now. So you can